screams louder.
So in the last video, we unveiled our 7.3 liter Godzilla. We answered the question on whether or not we could hook up a factory Coyote transmission, clutch, things to it and see if it works. So as you can see, we have a 2020 7.3 Godzilla out of a rolled Amazon van that I bought from Mullins Auto Parts. This is an MT82 off of a Gen 2 Coyote engine. We have a drive shaft for an S550 Mustang, you know, some other things just so we could adapt to this, to the car that we're going to be putting it in, which we are going to be revealing today, which is, it's technically just in the trailer. You ready to open it? Yep. You ready to see it? Also, if you haven't gotten entered for a chance to win our R32 GTR, we just put some fresh coilovers on it, which you guys may have seen that in another video, but let's just show them. Let's just see it. A lot of you guys guessed this in the last video, and it makes sense, but ooh, look at that, buddy. Look at that unit right there. The car that we are putting the 7.3 liter Godzilla is 2015 S550 Mustang. This thing started its life out as an Ecoboost automatic car that I bought from the auction. It has an angle kit in it. We ended up putting the 2JZ out of my S14 drift car in it. We took it on drift week. It was a lot of fun, but the issue is that chassis needs more torque. It's a big girl. It's a big Mustang. I mean, you look at a Mustang and on the internet, they don't look that big, and then you get them in person, you stick it in your enclosed trailer, and you could really tell how big it is. The R32 GTR looks tiny in the trailer, and that thing looks freaking huge. We're gonna go ahead and get this thing unloaded, and then we are actually going to be doing some test fitting today with the 7.3 Godzilla. We're gonna see if we need to shave the oil pan. We're gonna be messing with engine mount options and stuff like that. I plan on making engine mounts that we could possibly sell. Right now, this is an Ecoboost chassis, so it has a different subframe. We can get her unloaded. What you guys think? What a unit. Like, I really do forget how cool this car is. You can see we have the OG Drift Week banner. The very first Drift Week, 10 track days over, and we were gone 16 days, and we drove through all the states, and we put like 4,500 miles on this thing with the 2JZ, CD09 transmission, towing a trailer with all my tires and tools and everything. Pretty cool experience. So I'm pretty stoked that this chassis is actually getting the torque that it needs. And a lot of people were like, why don't you just put a Coyote in it? Why don't you just put a Coyote or something else? That wouldn't be fun. I mean, at that point, I could just get on the auction, buy a Coyote car. Like, the goal with this thing, obviously the new engine is really cool. It's great for hopefully titles and thumbnails, 7.3 Godzilla. Like, who wouldn't want to see that? And the fact that it has displacement, 7.3 liters of freaking fury, whatever you want to call it. Lots of torque, no replacement. Let's pop the hood. Let's see. One of the things about the 2JZ in this chassis is it looked tiny. Yeah. Like when you looked at it in there, you're like,
it's kind of big though.
It's definitely big. So, but look at that though, buddy.
That's not room. I've actually never worked on this car though.
No, you never touched it. So I basically built this thing by myself in December of 2019. So that, basically this thing was wrecked. It was wrecked pretty hard in the front.
Is this just one side?
Yeah. Well, this side, it wasn't wrecked over here. So it got
hit, half of a kit, or
no, that was Trevi Customs right there. I did that. So anyhow, I replaced, you know what I replaced? I replaced this whole thing right here. I had to move the shock tower back into its factory location, and I welded this in there just to give it a little extra support. It has a fender liner, so nothing really gets in the engine bay or makes a mess. Right here with the Ecoboost. You have the factory Ecoboost ECU right there.
I can't believe how much room it. Look, buddy, there's like 4 or 5 feet. Of like,
it's big.
Look how long the nose is. Holy
big.
Crap.
Really, really big.
Put a 6 liter in this
And
thing.
the thing about it is that there's plenty of room for, like, there's a big radiator, big intercooler, big everything.
I had no idea these were this big under the hood.
Yep. I mean, the 2J technically, it came to right here because the sway bar, it was right here.
Room on the firewall?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of room.
But it was like short.
Yeah.
It sat in there really low to get it, like, the transmission.
That motor's pretty tall, but after looking at this, I think there's gonna be some room.
2JZ S550 Mustang, or the 2JZ Mustang, is officially dead, and it is going to live on as a 7.3 liter powered Godzilla. But we need to quit freaking talking about it. We just need to do it. Supra, see, this is the last remaining Supra part on this thing.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna catch up with you guys after this commercial break. It's gonna be tomorrow, and we're gonna start messing with this thing. What's up guys, Trevor from the future here. I just wanted to interrupt this video and let you know that this week is Tech Week on MotionAutoTV.com. Every dollar spent not only gives you 7 times entries for a chance to win that R32 Nissan GTR, makes a little over 500 horsepower. We're putting these random pieces of tech in random orders. So somebody is gonna get this Xbox in an order, somebody's gonna get some headphones, somebody's gonna get a GoPro Hero 8, but one of our lucky VIP members is actually going to get this MacBook Pro. If you are not a VIP member, that is fine. You will still get entered to win the R32 and these random pieces of tech in your order. So click that link. Good luck. All right guys, so the Mustang is now out of the trailer. It is in the shop getting ready to go up on the beautiful bin pack lift. Need to take some stuff out of the engine bay in preparation for this Godzilla and testing some stuff. And speaking of testing some stuff, Garrett, how you doing?
Bad yourself?
I always like to call in Garrett on some of the projects. I mean, it's just, he knows when he gets a text from me, it's like, hey, we're gonna be firing up his little plasma table, cutting some things out, making some engine mounts. He likes to make fabrication stuff. He does a bunch of stuff for Saab. I tell him, I'm like, hey, you need to make some, you need to make something that you could sell to everybody. So we're potentially designing an engine mount kit, right? This chassis with this engine, there's gonna be a lot of obstacles with the oil pan, just other things. There's like this weird oil cooler on the side of the block. This thing hangs down really low. This transmission is kind of level with the bottom of the car. And so that oil pan hangs down an extra like 3 inches. So what we're doing right now is pulling some stuff off of the engine. We already pulled off the fan clutch in the front. That thing was huge. I don't think this thing would ever overheat if we had that fan clutch on there. Yeah, basically pulling off the stock engine mounts right here. Those plates, he's gonna take those home and come up with a plate solution to bolt on to the engine, and then he actually has some sleeves that we're going to weld on there, and we're going to try to figure out a motor mount or an engine mount solution. The one thing about these S550s is the Ecoboost subframe is different than the GT cars or the 5-liter Coyote cars, so these things are raised up a little bit more. You know, it's not that hard to get a GT subframe if this is a popular thing, and make some mounts for that. The good thing about this whole kit is that, you know, factory transmission crossmember, factory transmission shift linkage just bolts up in place, factory drive shaft, everything goes there. So essentially all we need to do is get that engine in there, level it and center it, and then make some mounts.
It'd be nice to stuff it in there with everything as much as possible, just so it's kind of real world situation, but strip it down whatever I do.
The biggest thing is the intake manifold. Obviously that's not going to clear the hood. I think it will clear the hood as long as you don't have something on there, but I think in order to get this engine in there, the bolts on the back are insane. Look at that. It's like this giant, what is that?
It's probably a 14 or 16.
Like my engine hoist chain won't even go around that. So like and then this would go up against the firewall. So I think what we're gonna have to do is pull off the intake manifold to be able to get that thing bolted, unless we go on the edge or something like a bolt. But we're gonna get this thing hooked up to the cherry picker and I guess start trying to test fit this thing in there and see how it works. Guys, so what you just witnessed there was Garrett's dirty finger trick on making an engine mount template. You just use the grease from your finger to make it.
That does it, yeah. At least close enough to get us started. Want to have where this hole and everything references in case with the mount we needed like a big bushing. We can kind of drop it down inside this pocket here. But for now, the plan is for everything to be above here. It's nice to kind of know what's there, take advantage of some existing design options if we get in a pinch. So not a bad reference, and I think that's mirrored pretty much. So
all right, so engine is over here on the engine stand, and so this engine basically, like I said, it did go through a hurricane. We need to replace the valve cover, but it also has that issue right there with the oil pan, which potentially we might need to shorten the oil pan anyhow or order a different oil pan, so it's not too big of a deal. Now we basically need to stick this thing in, see what it looks like in there. It's in the engine bay almost. Obviously, we still have a lot of moving and stuff to do. One of the big issues is it actually needs to go to the right a little bit. It's a little bit far there right now, but since this was out of a van, it had a power steering pump. Since it's in a Mustang, these things have electronic power steering or like an electric rack. Need to pull off this power steering pump right there, get that out of the way, and then we should be able to move this thing over. We did remove the exhaust manifold just because it was kind of hitting the steering shaft, and Garrett said that this side, what the exhaust manifold kind of looks like.
Yeah, so it's pretty much the outlet on the exhaust manifold is basically hitting the firewall there. So kind of been nice if both those manifolds just worked and you could just bolt it in.
And maybe once we get it a little bit further, obviously we have the engine mount right here with the Ecoboost. Essentially that's on like a pedestal, so like the Ecoboost is up here, the Coyote's down here. It might be one of those things where we potentially might need like a 5.0 subframe to give us some more room to like go down with the mount, instead of like, I'm feeling like we almost might have to come off that shelf to the side and then up to the block. It's definitely a tight package. So we're gonna get that thing off, scoot this thing over and see how it looks. All right, so this is one of the nice things. We have transmission just bolting right up.
Heck yes.
Oh wow, that pan looks perfect.
Right? Look at that little curve right there.
Dang. So we might be fine. We might not have to do anything, just build maybe a trap door system inside.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, boys, it is the next day. So yesterday I went ahead and just set the intake manifold on here just to kind of see. We moved the cherry picker out of the way and basically just set the jack up underneath it, kind of holding it up from the oil pan. And I essentially just wanted to look and see how the intake manifold would fit. So we have some clearance issues right here in the back. This is technically like a plastic piece, but the issue is, if you can see in the front, is right there, the intake manifold is actually probably about a 1/2 inch forward. So we technically need to go this much further back. So intake manifold is definitely going to be an issue. Went ahead and set the radiator in here. And so we have plenty of clearance right there with everything with these factory fans, but we also have room to move the radiator 3 inches forward if we absolutely needed to, if we wanted to do any, you know, like fun stuff up here in the front. So mostly was just looking at that stuff. And then Garrett actually showed up out here today. And how you doing?
Not good, not bad.
Not good? Well, you might not be in good. You might just be, you might be hiding it.
Yeah, that's possible.
He might,
never know.
He might not actually be doing good, and he accidentally told the truth.
Yeah, maybe.
That could have been what it was. So he took these things home yesterday and basically lined them out, and so now we have some plates to weld to. These are the ones that go in the chassis right there with the dirty finger trick. Those things look nice.
Oh yeah, not bad.
So
they're sitting in there right now. The other set, we did 2 sets, so I've got one that I'll take with me, one we'll leave in the car, but the base plates for the chassis side are sitting in there and looking pretty good. So.
Yeah, so we'll go look at that. Those ones fit a lot better than the ones that I did. I ended up having to hog mine out pretty good on my first rodeo. Bolt holes look like they line up nice. That's always good. Yeah, basically now we just need to bolt those guys up to the block, start making some things. So Ford Performance, actually, there was a picture running around of a silver or a gray GT350 with this crazy bulge in the hood. There's a video on YouTube, has like 400,000 views. The guy of the name of Revan Evan, well, that's his YouTube channel. Anyhow, he caught up with the guys at Ford Performance. They popped the hood, they gave him a ride in it, and it essentially has a manual 7.3. They had this intake manifold on it. They're coming up with a prototype intake manifold, which is similar to this. It's a little bit lower, and the snout comes out of the front instead of going up like this. Looking at the pictures of their engine bay, the engine sat down quite a bit further, and I think that would help us out right here in this back. I think what we need to do in general, in order to even get a hood to kind of clear on here, let's say if it did even have a lower profile intake manifold, is to actually remove the sway bar. So right now it's essentially sitting on the sway bar, and we have about another 1.5 to 2 inches that we could actually lower it down. So we're gonna go ahead and remove the sway bar, look into options for potentially replacing it. But for now, we're essentially gonna make these engine mounts without that kit, or without the sway bar essentially in it. And then we're gonna explore some options with that in the future. But right now, we just wanna get this thing ripping. So we got this sway bar removed, and you can see all of the room that we have down here now. We essentially stuffed the engine down about another 1.5 to 2 inches, which then allowed us to get this clearance right here for the intake manifold. So it is officially on there. The bolt holes are in. We have room behind it. We could probably scoot the engine back a little bit more, but the issue is now is that with the drive shaft, you know, in order to keep that length and everything happy, kind of leave it where it is. I guess we could technically shorten the drive shaft. Nothing will bolt up like factory. So I'd like to hop underneath it and show you guys where we're at with the exhaust manifolds. We're getting close over here, but we are running into the steering shaft, and we might end up cutting some of that. You can see we have the plates and everything. We were actually getting ready to tack it, but then now we're kind of at this dilemma on what to do with the steering shaft. This side of the engine looks okay, but exhaust manifold is officially on there, but it is also hitting the firewall. So I'm gonna raise this thing up in the air, show you guys what it looks like. Finally got the lift all wired up too, so we don't have to run an extension cord. Underneath the car, you can see that factory transmission cross member bolts right in. But I set the drive shaft in there earlier. Drive shaft lines up perfect. The shift linkage and everything basically hooks right up and then bolts to these 2 tabs right there on the bottom. Shift linkage, drive shaft is no problem. Since we lowered it down, you can see the oil pan sits about 1 inch or so below the cross member or the subframe right here. So that is potentially something that we might look at in the future, but I think for testing and everything, this should be fine to get it up and running. Looking at the exhaust manifolds, you can see that this one, it goes right into the firewall where that flange kind of hits, but there is room. So I think cutting off that flange, we should be able to, you know, go to like a V-band and then just basically order like a factory, like a Mustang GT exhaust, and then mate up to that at some point. So that way we don't have to make a full custom exhaust. See that we actually have some decent room right there, but the issue is just the steering shaft. So we could potentially maybe move the steering shaft over, kick it over to the side and add another little piece to it. So that way we don't have to make like a whole new exhaust manifold, but that is, I guess, one of our issues and one of our dilemmas. Also, one of the points of concern was going to be this factory oil cooler on the side of the block, and technically it fits. So factory oil cooler, which is basically uses the coolant to cool that, just like a truck style thing, is on there. So should be good in that aspect. Once we get the engine mounts officially welded in, then we could figure out how we're gonna wire this thing and then how we're gonna try and start it. So this thing looks pretty cool though, sitting in the engine bay. Just the fact that it is so big. It doesn't really look that much bigger other than it's a little bit taller than like a Coyote. Due to the Coyote's cylinder head style, you know, with the dual overhead cam, you have a lot more cylinder head on the side of the engine. This, we pretty much just have room for more exhaust manifold stuff. You know, the LS of the Ford now, but it's a 7.3 liter, so we got tons of displacement. And that is exactly what this chassis was missing, was all that torque. These things from the factory, 435 horse and 475 torque. And the cams that I've been looking at are like 550 horse, 550 torque. I need to get some stuff ordered for the ECU and stuff for this, but that will be in another video. I'm pretty stoked on how far we made it in this video so far and everything that we figured out about putting this thing in this chassis. So be sure to leave a comment down below on what you guys think about this whole swap project. Don't forget to get entered for a chance to win the R32 GTR, and this week is Tech Week, so click the link in the description, get some entries for the GTR, and I appreciate you guys watching. See you later.